Okay, welcome to another Moth video. So I've got here a bunch of clips, essentially of times that I've either messed up or I've crashed or found things difficult, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about what I've learned from going through those things and how I'm trying to improve. Maybe this will be an interesting video for you. So for example, here I've got a clip of some issues sailing upwind and why just sailing upwind itself can be tricky. We've got some clips of why the thin air itself is tricky. I mentioned in my first video that the thin air itself has proven to be a difficult boat to sail, and I'll talk a bit about why that's the case. Got some capsize recovery bits and pieces in here, and then some thoughts about how you try and depower boat, how you sail it in strong winds, and some more crashes on my attempts to try and do that. Yeah, and that's pretty much what we'll talk about today. So let's start with this first clip, which is a clip of me sailing side by side with Joe. So if we wind this forward a little bit, you can see Joe's here next to me. And it doesn't look all that close in the video, but I was really scared that I was just about to run into Joe here. The wind was really gusty, so you couldn't tell from 1 minute to the next whether you were going to be heading up or bearing away. And I really didn't want to crash into Joe. But what makes it so hard sailing upwind, I think, is highlighted in this video. So I'm going to just watch the video first, and then I'll highlight a few bits and pieces that happened during this video. Alrighty, well that was somewhat terrifying to rewatch. So we'll skip back a little bit earlier in this video and point out some of the things that was happening to me or what I was experiencing in the boat. So right about here, for whatever reason, I've managed to pull the boat right on top of me, and this isn't particularly desirable. Kind of a sort of a normal thing to happen in a sailing boat, right? You've suddenly become underpowered or hit a lull, or whatever you want to call it. The boat started to come on top of you. So what do you normally do? Well, you kind of sheet in and you bear away, right? But in a Moth, sheeting in is fine. I can pull this main in and hope that the power in the main then pulls me back upright, but it wasn't enough in this case. So I tried the bear away tactic. But if we think about where the horizon is here, my boat isn't upright anymore. My boat is leaning over an awful lot. So the rudder is now this sort of direction, where horizontal of course will be in this sort of direction. So my rudder isn't now going to nicely bear my boat away from the wind. The rudder's going to shoot the boat pretty much upwards. I don't know if you can imagine this, but yeah, I pull the rudder towards me, that pulls the back of the boat down, which forces the front of the boat up. So I'm going to get a little bit of bear away, but I'm also going to get quite a lot of sort of lifting this boat kind of vertically out of the water. This has already started happening in this image, which you can see here. And this is my mainfoil, tip of the mainfoil coming out of the water. So bearing away in a Moth can often get you into sort of more trouble than you were expecting. If you remember the bits of the video, I mentioned this quite a lot, where you're kind of steering this boat like a bike. Well, the fact that I've brought the boat too far on top of me and now I want to bear away, the bear away is actually making it worse and bringing the boat, if anything, even more on top of me, and also lifting it up. So yeah, really interesting situation here, really hard to handle. But yeah, it's just one of those things that makes sailing upwind really, really tricky. So I'll just play this for a little bit longer, and then we'll skip on to the next video. And in fact, it's probably worth mentioning that the opposite happens when you become overpowered. So if you've got too much power in your main, and the boat has accidentally tipped up and is coming near level again, you want to head towards the wind, well, that's going to throw the boat even more away from you. So upwind is hard. The steering kind of is doing the opposite of what you want it to do. It's very similar to what we were talking about, the differences between going through a tack and going through a jibe. Alright, so this next video is very similar effect, but when I'm going through a tack. So this is me messing up a tack, and two things are happening here. First, the boat comes too far on top of me. And I think this is what I was talking about last time, where my weight is a significant proportion of the weight of this overall system. So when I move across the boat, I'm simultaneously pulling the boat on top of me. So I end up with the boat too far leant over. And I'll just fast forward to that section now, actually. So I start moving into the boat, start heading up, start moving in here, and now we're in trouble. So we have the boat leant really far over now, compared to the horizon. And again, as we were mentioning with the rudder isn't going to suddenly now nicely pull me through the tack nice and parallel with the water. Oh no, it's going to slam me down into the water. So yeah, be really careful when steering the boat with a lot of heel. And yes, I'm sure you can guess what's going to happen next. Let's go with that. And I slam the bow into the water. It doesn't end up being a terrible tack. I didn't capsize, but it's really not ideal to end up in that situation. Let's watch that just one more time then. So I lean over, slam the bow down. Yeah, not ideal. Alright, next clip then is where I'm having issues with the thin air. So when it gets windy, and I'm sailing downwind in particular, the boat will usually end up being forced down into the water, and the foils, for whatever reason, can't keep it out of the water. And I like to relate this back to a feeling you get when you're windsurfing, and that sort of mast foot pressure that you're trying to generate when you're windsurfing. So a sail full of power isn't just driving the boat forwards, it's kind of pushing the bow down. And if you release that pressure, it can lift the bow up. If you drive that pressure on really hard and you're in a gust, it can help you push the bow down. What seems to happen here, it generates so much pressure in the sail and in the rig, the foil can't handle it for some reason. I don't know why. Most boats can handle this fine, but I struggle in the thin air. And it dives down, hits the water, and I end up in a big crash. So that's pretty much what's going to happen in this video now. So you can see the boat getting lower and lower, and the wand here is coming higher and higher, but it doesn't seem to be helping for whatever reason. And we've ended up having a beautiful pitch pole. So thankfully here I was able to stay attached to the boat, didn't fling myself off. But usually what happens if you stay attached to this wing is you just have this lovely pitch pole, and you end up climbing over the wing, which I think I show in the rest of this video, so you get to see a bit of how I capsize recovery, if that's particularly interesting. Nothing fancy happening here, I just sort of have little writing lines in a thin air, and I get to thankfully I'm tall enough to climb over the wing. I can imagine if you're not quite tall enough to do this, it's very frustrating to sail a Moth, but this went nice and simply. So I wanted to stop the video here and say that there's a lot of buoyancy in a thin air wing. The wing is made up of like fabric on the inside and the outside, and in the middle is an airbag, which you can fill up with loads of air, and there's plenty of buoyancy. So sailing it when you're not foiling, you can sort of rest that wing on the water, no problem at all. You can also sail along with this wing resting on the water, no problem at all. And I actually do kind of both here, and I think in a second I'm just about to flop it over on top of me, and sailing it like this is no problem at all either. So another view of this, which has a few extra things happening. This was from a few weeks ago. I was at Queen Mary and it was extremely windy, and I was trying to depower the Moth. So one technique I can use when I'm sailing downwind and I don't want to have this horrible pitch pole because I'm overpowered is to depower the Moth. And the way I can do that is to sheet the main right onto the center line as hard as I can, and then bear away so that I'm almost dead downwind. And that will just take all of the power out of the rig and out of the sails. And that's what's happening for the first part of this video. If you watch, the speed just drops and drops and drops, which you can see on this speed graph. And then we'll talk about what happens afterwards in a moment. So I'm realizing I'm getting close to the wall of the reservoir. It's pretty scary here. I just want to slow down. So I start bearing away. So yeah, I'm pretty borne away here, not generating much power. I don't have that boat heeled on top of me. But I'm approaching this wall. I need to do something. I need to round up. I need to get through this scary zone. And I try to ease the main as far out as I can and then round up. But it doesn't go to plan, and easing the main out is enough to overpower the boat and cause a pitch bomb. So that's pretty much what this graph is. A lot of acceleration into a crash. There the main's gone out even further. The boat's accelerating hard now, and as much as the thin air tries, it can't keep the bow out of the water, so we have another spectacular crash. So amusingly, somehow, I end up on the wrong side of the forestay after the crash. So fine, I crash over there, no problem. But then, as the boat's coming up here, I'm swimming over from the forestay, so no idea how I got there. It was a spectacular crash. Alright, so this next video is how I was trying to solve that problem, even though I think in that particular case it was just too windy. Me and my skill level and that equipment just wasn't enough to survive that particular scenario. But this is what I've been trying to do since, to try and save myself. So we go through quite a speedy jibe, and then I'm going to try and heel the boat on top of me as much as I can in order to generate enough righting moment that I can round the boat up, even when it's quite windy. So that's what this video is going to be. I'm going to go through a jibe. I'm going to come out pretty quickly, so it's 25, 26 miles an hour. And then I'm going to try and round up and spin the boat up, which is this final hook on the end of the video, by rolling the boat on top of me as much as I can. So let's watch that through. Lovely. So we wind it back a little bit. This jibe wasn't all that clean. I seem to try and steer into the jibe with it heeled over on top of me, but thankfully I get some leaning into the jibe to get it through. And at this point I'm thinking, well, how can I sheet the main out as far as I can and also heel the boat on top of me as much as I can? So those are the two things that are happening. Main's going out and I'm trying to get that boat length on top of me so that here we go, I can just steer up into the wind. And then we slow it right down, ready to stop, nice and safely. So next, after the capsize, or for whatever reason we now need to get boiling again, I wanted to talk a little bit about how do you get a Moth up on the foils from when you're in a non-foiling position. So let's just watch this video, which I believe is just me getting up on the foils. And I'll just talk through a couple of the things that's going through my head as I'm trying to get the boat on the foils. A couple of things you can feel in the boat as you're going through that sort of change of phase. And there we go, we're up on the foils. Okay, so winding back to the start then, at this point I'm thinking, is there enough wind? Is there enough wind to foil here? And I've got the boat relatively flat. If it was too much on top of me and there isn't enough wind, I will just flop into the water, and then having the wings in the water is going to slow me down. So I'm trying to build up some speed and feel when there is enough wind to get me foiling. And by that I mean when I think there's enough wind, I can sort of bring this wing down a bit closer to the water, and then having the boat heeled over on top of us is going to be the key to getting this boat foiling. So let's wind forward, and hopefully I'll feel that there's enough wind and get the boat on top of me. So it looked a bit sketchy at first when the boat kind of flopped over on top of me and I wasn't sure if there was enough wind, but then it did power up. I could hook myself in and start hiking. There was enough power to hold me on this wing. This is perfect. If we were trying to foil earlier on in this video, when the boat was in this sort of position, this is a bit extreme, but it'll do. If I'm trying to generate some power in the main, with the boat leaning slightly away from me, what I think is happening is as we build speed, the foil is going to start generating the lift rather than the hull generating the lift. And the foil here is going to be more to windward than the hull is. So the more the foil starts to generate lift, the less righting moment I'm going to have. Which I think is the reason why moths just hate being lent away from you or even being upright, is as you come up on the foils you don't gain that lovely righting moment. So in order to get to the point of foiling, we really want to sail that boat over on top of us, as we were doing further on in the video. This is perfect. So now when you imagine that foil still under the water somewhere, when that starts generating the lift rather than the hull generating the lift, we're going to gain that extra righting moment, and the boat just feels more and more powerful the faster you go. And there's this other thing that's happening, which is that the power in the main is still giving us that mast foot pressure, kind of pushing the boat forward but also pushing the bow down. So in a weird way, power in the main is also forcing the bow down into the water. So I end up easing the main a lot, so the boom can end up a long way out here, and that lifts the bow. So again, that windsurfing analogy, if you've done windsurfing and you've lost that mast foot pressure, the front of the board can flip up into the air and start feeling really sketchy. In this case, it can be quite useful to lift the bow up, give those foils a chance to work, and get that boat out of the water, reduce the drag. Once you're up, that's the point you can sheet the sail back in again, start driving forward and driving that bow down. If you don't start driving again, you're likely to just rise up out of the water until your foils are no longer in the water. So you do need to do that transition, which I think is what's happening in the rest of this video. So let's just watch the boat as it rises up and then levels off once it's out of the water. Yeah, so it's coming up now, and now I'm safe to sort of sheet in. Lovely. So that's all I wanted to say in this video. I'll leave you with a clip of a little bounce tack that I managed to do here, and on the way out of this tack I have that moment of being overpowered and struggling to sail the boat upwind. So I'm fiddling with the controls. I end up overpowered. I can't head up into the wind without just pushing the boat falling away from me. that is hopefully a fun look at a bunch of my mistakes, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.